Wings. How on earth do you even begin to design them in Fusion 360? I'm Terrence, this is RC CAD to VR, and this is the episode where we start designing a wing in Fusion 360 for our RC airplanes. But hold your horses. There are two things that I want to discuss. First, if you have not watched episode 1 on how to start designing an airplane in Fusion 360, I strongly recommend you go back to that episode, watch it first, because there are several things that we do in that particular episode that I'm going to build upon within this episode. And the bigger thing that I want to talk about. Thank you to Matt Morley of Minneapolis, Minnesota for making a very generous contribution to my tip jar on RC CAD to VR. Your contribution is going to go a long way to help me continue making these episodes for everyone and for the further development of the L1011 RC kit when it becomes available. Also, I want to thank James Bedoya of Miami, Florida, who also made a contribution. It is absolutely crazy to think that there are people out there that are really enjoying this work and are getting something out of it and feel compelled to actually make a contribution. So just thank you so much. I'm so grateful for your support. Thank you very much. Now, on to what you guys are all here for. Let's start designing the wing. Let's head back to the computer and get this thing on the road. That sounded funny. Okay, before we get started, there's one thing that you're gonna have to do, and that is install a script into Fusion 360 called Airfoil dat to Spline. But don't panic, it is actually very simple to install. What I've done is I've created a companion article on my website that is going to complement this particular tutorial, and the link is down below in the description. It has everything that you're going to need and all of the reference materials in order to actually do this particular tutorial. Now that particular script, like I said, is very easy to install. All you have to do is follow those instructions and we'll be off to the races. So go ahead and do that, pause this video, get that installed, and then head on back and we'll continue.
Make sure all seats are in the upright position and trays are put away before we take off.
Hopefully that wasn't too difficult to get installed. If you did have challenges with it, please let me know in the comments so that way I can update the instructions on the website so that way others have an easier time with getting it installed. But hopefully I did an okay job with helping you get that installed. So now that we've got that done, let's go ahead and move into actually working on the first step, which is adding in our construction planes in 3 critical parts that we're going to need for the actual design of our airplane wing. So let's go ahead and head into Fusion 360 and get this thing started. This is where we're going to start working on the wings. Currently you can see we've got the profile view of our L1011 or whichever model you might be working on. And as you can see, we've got our formers in place from what we did in episode 1, how to design an RC airplane in Fusion 360. Now we're going to build on that. And before we can actually start working on the wing, there are several things that we need to do. We need to set up all of our workspace in order to actually build out the pieces that we need. So the first thing that needs to be done is we need to set the construction planes in place before we begin anything. So I am going to go ahead and I'm going to turn off my profile view, and now we've just got our formers. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to add my offset plane, which is a construction plane, but it's called offset plane from up here. Tap on that, and I'm going to now actually change the scale of this a little bit. And the next thing that I want to do is I want to move this to the wing root. So I'm going to select the construction plane, and then I'm going to press M for move. And you can see now we've got our triad move tool here, and we're going to start moving this into place. Now I'm going to get my top view in place, and you can see it's currently positioned right in the center. That's not where we want it. So I'm going to turn on my footprint. And now you can see our footprint, and now we know where our wing root is going to be. So I'm going to now move this and put this in place here. Okay, now I want to make sure that I'm as close to the fuselage as I can get. The edge of the fuselage here. So it's not letting me do that, so let me move this by 7.5, and we're almost there. Let's do 7.6. That looks good. Okay, so I'm going to click OK. Now the last thing we want to do is we want to scale this construction plane to the right size. So I'm going to take this, pull on this side right here, and pull it to right about there. So now we've pretty much got the wing root plane in place. Now the last thing I want to do is I want to make sure that I have this in the right position from a profile view. So I'm going to select it again, press move, and now I'm going to move this up into place. So you can see here that this is actually where the wing root is. We're going to ignore this area because that's actually the fairing, but the actual wing starts right about here. So I'm going to make sure that this is in the right place. And I'm going to click OK. Now we've got our first construction plane in place to where our wing root is going to go. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select this, and then I'm going to right click and select copy. And then I'm going to right click again after I do that, and I'm going to say paste. You can do Command C or you can do Control C depending on whether you're a Mac or a PC, but right click gets you that option as well. So now it's giving me the triad to move. I'm going to move this one out, and you can see now I'm moving it out, and I've got a copy of that. Now this one needs to actually be placed in a different place. So let me reselect this. And now I'm going to go back to my top view, and I'm going to turn on my footprint again so I can see what I'm working with. Now you can see that at this point, at the end of the main flap, we actually have this angle change in the wing. And so I'm going to put a construction plane right at that point. And this is very important that you do that if your model has this particular configuration, which most airliners do have something similar to this. And then I'm going to come over here to my elevation view or my profile view, and I'm going to make sure that I'm in the right position here. And then I'm going to change the size of this, make it not so tall because we don't need that much space. And now one last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to actually look at the elevation view, which is the front view. And I'm going to make sure that this sits and that I've got the right thickness. As you can see here, we've got this yellow line. So I just want to make sure that I'm covering the entire area. And in fact, I do. So one more to go. So now I'm going to come back in here. Let me turn these off so we can see it easier. Select this, and again, Command C or Control C for copy, and then Command V for paste. So now I'm going to move this out again, and this one is going to go to the wing tip. Back to the footprint view, and I'm going to move this into place. Now, this is a little bit different because we're not going to actually set this directly on the edge because we've got this curvature here. So I'm going to actually put this right about here, just ahead of this curvature. And that will be where our airfoil, our final airfoil will sit. So I'm going to say OK. Now I'm going to shrink this down to get it to about the right size. Now you don't have to do this, but it's easier for you to see which construction plane you're working with when you size it this way. So now I need to make sure that I'm in the right place. So I'm going to look at my profile view, And as you can see, we're just a little bit low. And we need to raise this up a little bit. So I'm going to select this, hit M for move. We get our little tool, and then I'm going to drag this up to make sure that I'm covering that area. Hit OK. And then I'm going to scale this a little bit. And voila. Now that we've got our construction planes in place, now we can actually get to the next part, which is putting in our airfoils. Now, airfoils, that's a very, very large conversation and very large topic, and I'm not going to go into detail on how to choose an airfoil and what to do and what not to do. I have added the 2 airfoils that I'm using, so they are available for you if you want to use those, or you can go to airfoiltools.com and find your own airfoils. Now, there are a couple of things that you're going to need to know before you decide on your own airfoils, and I also would recommend you don't design your own because you want to have predictable outcomes and results in the wing that you're designing. So when you're actually deciding on which airfoil you want to use, you'll notice that there are several charts. Well, one in particular is actually important for the lift coefficient. It's known as the lift coefficient versus alpha chart, and it's CL v alpha. It's an example like I have put right here. That's what that chart looks like. And a quick way to understand how this chart works is the slope indicates how much lift is generated based on the angle of attack of the wing. And at the top of the slope where it curves off, that's actually where the wing will stall based on the angle of attack. You'll also need to know the Reynolds number, and you can do the research on your own on that, but the Reynolds number is basically how fast you're moving through the air. It'll give you a number, and then that's plotted on that particular chart. So when you're choosing your airfoil, make sure you're choosing an airfoil that's going to behave the way you want it to behave in your airplane. So once you've got that done, we're going to go ahead and start placing these airfoils. Now having the airfoil script installed in Fusion 360, now we can use that to import our airfoils. The first one that I'm going to import is the root airfoil. I'm going to show you a little hack before we actually get to adding our first airfoil. So I'm going to look at my top view and turn on my footprint. What I want to do is I want to get the measurement or the chord from the trailing edge of the root to the leading edge of the root. And a quick way to do that is if you use the box tool, click on that, and then click one time at the end, and then you can click, hold, and drag all the way to here. And what you'll notice is the dimension is right there, and it's already selected. So if you go and hit Command-C or Control-C, that will copy it, and then simply hit escape, and we didn't actually create a box, but we got the measurement. It is a bit of a hack. You do have this measuring capability, but it doesn't work on just an empty surface. So that's a neat little hack that you can use to get that measurement. One last thing. Before I go too deep into this, some of you guys are going to want to click, 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 fast forward. I recommend you don't do that because each of these airfoils, I have a slightly different step and a slightly different process that I use for each of them. So you're not going to want to miss those because they are kind of important. All right, so back to it. So now that we've got the measurement on our clipboard, the next thing that I'm going to do is hold down Shift and then press S, which is now going to bring up our script and add-ins. And here you can see we've got our Airfoil dat to Spline script, which we added. So I'm going to double tap that. And over here you can see the airfoil parameters. This is where we're going to enter in a couple of bits of information. If you see here, we've got the chord. And the chord we already have on our clipboard. So I'm going to take that, delete, and I'm going to paste that in there. You can see now we've got that pasted in there. That's going to get us the right chord for our airfoil. Next, we're going to select our construction plane, which is the root construction plane. And then we press OK. Now it's going to ask you for your DAT file. And you should have already downloaded your files for the airfoils that you're wanting to have. And in this case, for the root, I'm going to choose this NASA SC2 airfoil. So I'm going to select that and I'm going to press open. You're not going to see it and your construction plane is going to go away, but don't worry, it's actually there. It's just not quite in the right place. Where are you? There we are. Now, why it does this, I have no idea. I have not been able to crack the code on why this issue happens. It's way back here at the tail, but that's really not big of a big deal. We can just move that into place. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come and I'm going to select the actual sketch here, and I'm going to press move again because I want to actually move this sketch. You can see it's puts us in this weird position. So what I want to do is I want to actually zoom in to this sketch. And what I want to do is I want to select the pivot point, which is done here, set pivot. So I'm going to select that. And then I'm going to press the very leading edge node. And then once that's done, hit done. And now you've got this where you actually can move it where you actually want it. So I'm going to move this actually into place. We're going to zoom in here. And now I'm going to position this right there. I am going to take this airfoil and I'm actually going to rotate it by about 1.5 degrees, increasing its angle of incidence. I want to increase how much lift this airfoil is going to generate when the plane is at level flight or going down a level surface. And now I'm going to select OK. And there we can see we've got our very first airfoil. There is a problem, however. If you've downloaded one of the airfoil tools, Airfoils, you'll notice this is not filled in, meaning you can't actually create a shape off of this just yet. And the reason is, if you take a look here, you will see that the ends, where the trailing end has got a gap in it. We need to fix this gap. The way to do this is go into your construction, or the way we do this is go into the sketch, right click and select edit sketch. And now we've got our sketch tools, and I'm going to select the line tool, and then I'm going to come here until it actually snaps into place, and you'll see that there's a little square indicating that you're snapped. Select, and then you're going to pull down and you're going to go down until you see the same little square and close that. And once that's done, you'll notice that this is now filled in, which means now you can extrude a shape out of it. All right, so I'm going to select Finish Sketch because I'm done with that one. And there we go, our very first airfoil. You can see how that's positioned in there. All right, let's take a quick breather. And while we're taking a breather, I wanted to take this opportunity to also remind you to tap that little subscription button because this video is going to be broken up into 2 or maybe 3 videos depending on how long they run, and I want to make sure that you don't miss the next episode so you can finish your wing design. So anyway, also if you're liking this video or have watched any of the other ones, I like hearing from you. Please leave a comment. Give it a thumbs up if you're getting some value out of it. All right, enough of the shameless pandering and plugging. Let's get back to Fusion 360. All right, now it's time to do the second airfoil. We're going to do the same thing now for the middle airfoil that we're going to place. And again, we're going to move to our top view so we can see the footprint, and we're going to do a quick hack measure. All right, so we can see it's 419. Again, Command C or Control C to copy that since it's already selected. We're going to escape out of that. Now we're going to do Shift S again to get our script add-ins. Double click our airfoil. We're going to paste in that dimension. Then we're going to select our construction plane. So we've selected that. And then select OK. And I'm going to do the same airfoil. In my design, I actually use 2 airfoils to have a more strong transition from the wing tips to the wing root. However, for this example, I'm going to use the same airfoil. Select OK. And now, again, we've got the case of the missing airfoil, so we're going to have to zoom out, and there it is. And then we know that this is it right here, so I'm going to select Move, or the M tool. And then again, I'm going to set my pivot point to the leading edge. So set pivot point and then zoom in. There we go. And then hit done. It's very important you always hit done. And now let's get to our left view. Zoom out. Okay, now we're going to move this into position. All right, this one's not going to be as easy to position. We're going to need a couple of views to do this, so I'm going to get this in the general vicinity. So now I'm going to move to the top view to see the footprint. And I'm going to move this to the leading edge right there. And then I need to look at the elevation front-on view. So I'm going to turn on the elevation view. You can see I'm a little bit high. Well, not high, but you get the point. Okay, so I'm going to pull this down to right about there. And so now we've got this positioned exactly where we need it. And we're going to press OK. And voila, we have got our second airfoil in place. Now we're going to repeat this one last time, this time for the wingtip airfoil. And like before, I'm going to get a measurement of how long this is going to be. So I'm going to select my box tool, select here, and drag across till I get to that. Then copy, escape, come back in here, Shift S, airfoil, gonna come in here, paste in my size, and then select the canvas or the construction plane I want, press OK. This time I want to use the Curtis C airfoil. I'm gonna select OK. And again, we've got the case of the missing airfoil. It's way over here. So I want to make sure that I move this. I'm going to select my Curtis C out of this and then press Move. And again, set my pivot point to the leading edge, which is right there. Hit Done. And now we're going to get to our profile view. We're going to move this into place. Okay, now let's talk washout. As you can see, this plane, the wingtip is actually pointing downwards, and that is known as washout. Okay, so I introduced a new concept to some of you called wing washout. To others, this is a very familiar thing, but I'm going to give you a quick overview of what it is and why you need to have this, or why you should have this at least, in your wing design. So I've got my handy dandy super scaled model airplane here to kind of demonstrate, to give you guys an idea of what the washout is for. So if you remember when I started with the root airfoil, what I did was I actually angled it ever so slightly higher. So the angle of incidence was a little bit higher. Whereas when I did the wingtip, I actually did it tilted down. Now, there's a very good reason for doing this. I used a much higher lift airfoil in my wingtip than I did in the wing root. And what that allowed me to do was actually angle the wing airfoil or the wingtip airfoil downwards, meaning even when it's pointing down, meaning the angle of incidence is downward when it's in level flight, it's still producing lift. Now the other part is when I'm at a high angle of attack, the root will begin to stall before the wingtip. And this is very, very important for the overall performance and handling of your plane. What ends up happening is if you're at a high angle of attack and the root starts to stall, you don't want your wingtip to stall at the same time. What you want to do is you want to make sure that the wingtip is still producing lift or maintaining laminar flow over the surface of the wing, so that way you still have aileron authority in a stalled condition. So if you don't add that into your wing, you'll end up into what they call a wingtip stall, which really isn't a thing, but where you stall and now you don't have any control because you've lost the smooth airflow over the tips where your ailerons are. So for that reason, it is a very good idea for you to add washout in your wing design. So enough of the little tiny washout lesson. Let's get back to Fusion 360 and wrap up this episode. And so we're going to actually do a rotation here to match this roughly. So I'm going to give it about a -3 degrees. And let's see, we're going to move this into place. Now let's move to the top view and make sure that we've positioned it about right. Yep, almost there. Just a little adjustment. And then let's move to the front elevation view to make sure that we've got this right where we want it. Right there. And press OK. All right. And now we've got 3 airfoils in place. Now we need to come back one more time and we need to make sure that we close up these airfoils. So I'm going to come in here really quick. As you can see, once again, our airfoil is not closed. So I'm going to select this, right click and edit sketch. Select, select, and that will close that sketch so you can see it's filled in. So I'm going to say finish sketch, and then we're going to do this with this right here, very end. Now it looks like it's connected, but as you can see, it's not filled in. And you can look here, it just barely connects. So we're zooming way in. And again, we're going to select right click, edit sketch. We're going to use our line tool, come in here, wait till we get the square, select, drag down, select, and once again, we are filled in. And finish sketch. All right, there it is, our 3 airfoils. This is what we need now to move on to the next step, where I'm going to show you how to actually create the surface area that you need and adding in the ribs. All right, everyone, we've covered a lot of ground in these last 30 minutes, so we're going to go ahead and stop here. But please do subscribe if you haven't already done so. That way you don't miss the release of part 2, the continuation of designing your wing. Until then, take care.